4 years ago, I was looking up some cool memes when I saw a lot of people posting ponies, and I thought to myself, there's gotta be some sort of joke, right? If there's one thing that pisses me off, it's missing out on a joke. So out of curiosity, I clicked that play button, and well, the rest is history. Now, as I sit here, reviewing My Little Pony fanfiction, I finally figured it out. The joke was on me the whole time. Coincidentally, for today's review, we are going back to the beginning, but this time, things are a little different. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Shimmerverse.
Now I give a damn about my reputation. You're living in the past, it's a new generation. And a girl can do what she wants to do, and that's what I'm gonna do.
Once upon a time, there was a filly named Sunset Shimmer. Abandoned by her parents, she grew up in an orphanage, and despite looking like this, nobody took her in. To say this made her resentful is an understatement. Fortunately, she was also skilled in magic, which drew the attention of Celestia herself. So after giving her the classic egg test, Celestia adopted Sunset as her own. Now, Princess Sunset Shimmer is living the life of luxury with her brother Spike, but when Nightmare Moon comes rearing her ugly head, it's up to Sunset and the elements of harmony to save the day. Wait. I don't get it. So, are you saying that this is basically the pilot episode, but with Sunset Shimmer as the lead? Didn't you read the story? Do I have to? Well, to answer your question, not exactly. In this story, the elements of harmony are replaced by background characters. Oh, okay, so like Derpy, Lyra, maybe even Trixie. Actually, they were already taken. Taken? Yeah, the Luniverse already called dibs. The Luniverse. That's a thing. Yep. Okay, so, I mean, we still got Octavia and Vinyl and Kane's verse. So who's left? Well, I'm glad you asked. First up, we have Coco Pommel. Oh yeah, the cute one from Marty Takes Me Manhattan. Next up, Lightning Dust. Oh yeah, the jerk off from Wonderbolt Academy. Nurse Redheart. The Red Cross pony. Fiddlesticks. Is that the apple one with the violin? Pizzelle. And finally, Quick Fix. Yeah, I know, I was a little bit confused at first, but it turns out he's actually talking about Silver Spanner. He just changed the name so it'd be a little bit snappier, you know what I mean? Now, this group of friends and their adventures make up the Shimmerverse, an alternate take on the My Little Pony canon. However, considering that half the cast is made up of D-list side characters and the, well, tough competition, the story didn't gain a whole lot of traction, which is actually a real shame, considering that A Different Sunset is actually really solid. Let's start off with Sunset Shimmer. I like her. For one, I'm a sucker for characters with a redemption arc. Who isn't really? Second, she's freaking cute. I mean, look at her.
I said look at her.
She's adorable. Before I started reading this story, I was concerned that Sunset would be Twilight with a different color palette. And she is, if Twilight were a complete Sunset is egotistical, stuck up, short-tempered, and my favorite character in this entire story. She's a jerk, but you can get why. The fact that she was abandoned by her parents and nobody wanted her made her extremely resentful. And despite eventually being taken in by Celestia, she still carried that negative perspective of the world. And you know what? I really like this interpretation, for two reasons. One, her prickly personality contrasts really well with Twilight's sparkle, making this story feel fresh. Two, it sets up a flawed character who has a lot to learn. Despite the vastly different circumstances, the appeal of Canon's Sunset Shimmer remains intact. She's joined by Spike, whom she hatched as a child and considers to be her brother. In this universe, Spike is more mature, larger, and is very charismatic. Natural lady killer. More importantly, he plays an excellent foil to Sunset. Whenever she starts to get all high and mighty, he's the one who brings her back to earth. And I, for one, love their dynamic. Just like real siblings, they have a constant love-hate relationship. That is just so fun to watch. However, this story's biggest challenge was to sell us on Sunset's new posse, consisting of at least 3 characters that don't even have their own tags on Fanfiction. So how did he do? For the most part, pretty well. Due to the short time constraints, there wasn't a whole lot of space for deep character development, but he did do a good job of establishing their personalities and the roles that they would play. Quick Fix and Fiddlesticks play the unruly wildcards, with the first being a headstrong Canadian inventor, highly reminiscent of Portal's Cave Johnson, and the second being the unholy love child of Applejack and Pinkie Pie. Nurse Redheart and Pizzelle are the stabilizing elements, the first being a no-nonsense field medic, and the second being a well-mannered chatterbox with simple ambitions. Lightning Dust is the muscle, and comes off as a slightly more aggressive Rainbow Dash, which really isn't surprising considering that every analyst and their mother already made that comparison. And finally there's Coco, who takes a highly coveted role of the cute one. Like I said before, the character development for these guys was pretty thin, but considering this is only the first part of an ever-growing universe, I really don't mind. And when you look back at Friendship is Magic Part 1 and 2, did you really think the character development was that great? Did you go, wow, that Rarity is a well-written 3-dimensional character that I absolutely love? No, you thought, they're okay, but Fluttershy's so freaking adorable! Don't lie to me, I know that's what you were thinking. I could spend hours talking about about all the new characters and about how he reinterprets all the old ones, but I think it's time to address one of the biggest points of contention. The world of the Shimmerverse. Here's the thing, this is not just a simple character swap. For this story, Evil Wizard took the alternate universe tag and went to freaking town on it. Whereas Canon Equestria is an idealistic, family-friendly fantasy land, the Shimmerverse is a world filled with war, killer monsters, and racial tensions. Celestia, Luna, and Discord are seen and acknowledged as full-fledged deities, and have cults devoted to them. Meaning we got priests, warlocks, followers, inquisitors, and all that jazz. Most people find it reminiscent of the Warhammer universe in terms of its tone and lore. Speaking of the lore in this universe, Evo went completely ballistic. Now, you might be thinking to yourself, this is a lot to take in. And at first, it definitely is. Especially when you consider that one of the first scenes involves a group of chaos cultists being massacred by a Nightmare Moon fanatic. Yeah, we're definitely not in Kansas anymore. Also, with all this new lore, the story does get a wee bit exposition-y at times, delving into topics that really have no bearing on the plot whatsoever. But I eventually got used to the tone, and the writing did lighten up later on, so it's not really a deal breaker. You know, 32, this really isn't starting to sound like My Little Pony anymore. And in some ways it isn't. But here's the weird thing. Despite its darker world, it still works. While the setting feels more like Game of Thrones than it does My Little Pony, the opposite could be said about our cast, which is where the author keeps the primary focus. You see, what matters to me most is the characters. I don't mind a darker Equestria, just as long as the characters are fun to be around, and that is the case here. They're colorful characters with unique personalities that have a good sense of camaraderie. They're not dark and violent characters, they just happen to live in a dark and violent world. So in a sense, the spirit of My Little Pony remains intact. And I've actually read ahead and I can tell you, that this is very much a character-focused series. If you really want to get into the lore of this universe, I would recommend Shimmering Sunset, say, crossover with the Sunset verse.
Whoa, hold up. There's a Sunset verse and a Shimmer verse?
And the Winning verse, and the You're Human and You verse, and the Gentleman verse, and the Optimal verse, and the Pony Earth verse, and the Twiny verse, and the Geo verse, and the Apple Scratch verse, and the Man of War verse, and the Bible verse, and the Wonderverse. Can't forget about that one. That one's really good. Speaking of which, I really should get to that at some point. I'll get to eventually. Joel? Huh, guess he had to use the bathroom or something. Anyway, where was I? Right, well, anyway, you get where I'm coming from. If anything, the Warhammer setting feels more like an excuse to have higher and deadlier stakes. And I'm fine with that. At the end of the day, A Different Sunset is a really good pilot. Even though the character development is a little thin and the setting is a little hard to take in, the cast and the setting were well established. While I can't say that it blew me away, A Different Sunset is a solid story that does a great job of setting itself apart from the canon and makes My Little Pony seem fresh again. Much like the pilot it was based on, it makes me eager to see more of what this world has to offer. This story gets my seal of approval, and I definitely recommend checking it out. Also, if you happen to be waiting for the last part of a certain quadrilogy coming at the end of September, I'm just saying, it's a good way to pass the time. Anyway, I'm Changeling number 32, and I will see you at the next fanfic review. Hey everybody. So this episode of the Fanfic Review is brought to you by the invigorating power of Diet Mountain Dew. Without this show would not exist. So, all praise the mighty Dew. Do the dude. Why the am I doing this? I'm in my parents' basement doing this at 12 o'clock at night